Welcome to the State Council Information Office's press conference. Today, we have invited Mr. Shen Hongbing, who is Deputy Director of the National Disease Prevention and Control Administration and Director of China CDC. He will brief us about China's study of origins of SARS-CoV-2 and take your questions. Also present at the press conference today are Professor Tong Yigang of the College of Life Science and Technology of Beijing University of Chemical Technology and researcher Zhou Lei from China CDC. First, I give the floor to Mr. Shen Hongbing.
各位媒体朋友，大家下午好。
Friends from the media, good afternoon.
距离2019年年底新冠疫情
Since
被发现以来，
SARS-CoV-2 was found at the end of 2019, it has been over 3 years.
我们一直在持
During
续
this
推
time,
进
we
相
have
关
been
溯源研究工作。
continually studying the origins of
新
the
冠病毒
virus.
溯源研究是一个很专业的
The
问题，
study of the origins of SARS-CoV-2 is actually a very professional subject.
始终保
The
持
Chinese
科学
government
态度
and Chinese scientists have
都
always
很希
followed
望
a science-based
把新冠
approach
病
to
毒的
it,
来源
and we all
搞清
want
楚。
to find out
这
about the
对于
sources of the
防
virus.
止类似疫
This
情
is
再
very
次发生
important for
具有
preventing
非
similar
常重要的意义。
pandemics from happening again.
下面我从两个方面
I'd
简
like
要
to
介
brief
绍一
you
下这3年间
about the work we've
我们
done
在新冠病
in the
毒溯
past
源
3
方面
years from the
工作
following
情况。
aspects.
首先，作为开放大
First,
国，在
as
疫
an
情发
open
生
major
后，
country,
我们在溯源这个科学问
After
题上一直秉持科学态度
COVID-19 struck,
积极与
we
世
have
界
followed
卫
a
生组织
science-based
沟通合
approach
作，
to
为
origins
响应
tracing,
第
which is a matter
73
of
届
science,
世卫大
and
会决
actively
议
engaged in communication and
率先
coordination
主动邀请
with
世卫组织
WHO.
选派国际
In
专家
response to the resolution
两
at
次
the
来
session
华
of the
合作开展
73rd
溯
session of
源联合研究
WHA, we took the lead and initiative
在
to
坚
invite
持
WHO
共同制
to
定
send
工作方案
international experts to
共
China
同开
twice
展
for
分析研究
cooperation on joint
共
study
同撰
on
写
the
研究报
origins
告
of the virus.
共同发布
On
研
the
究结
principle
果的
of
原则
jointly
下
formulating the work
成功
plan,
在
jointly
武汉
conducting
完
analysis
成
and
了第一
study,
阶段
jointly
联合
writing the
溯源
research
研究
reports, and jointly
形
publishing the
成的
research
世界卫
outcomes.
生组
We
织
successfully
召
concluded the
集的
phase 1 of the joint study in
SARS-CoV-2
Wuhan
新冠
and
溯源研
produced
究
the
工作
report
部分
called WHO
世卫组
Convened
织
Global Study
中
of
国联
Origins
合
of
研究报告
SARS-CoV-2, China
得
Part,
到了当
Joint
时
WHO
参与
China
研
Study.
究的国
The
内外专
report
家
won full
和世卫
recognition
组织的
by the
重要任
Chinese and
务。
international experts participating
在
in the
整个第
study
一阶段
and by the
联合研究
WHO.
过程中，
Throughout
中
the
国
phase 1
向联
study,
合专家组提供
China
了当时所
provided
掌握的所有
all
溯源相关资
the
料，
origins tracing
没有隐
related
瞒
information
任何
to the
病例
joint mission
样
that
本
we had.
及其
We did
检
not
测的
hide
可分析
any
结果。
cases, samples,
近日，
or
世卫组
testing
织
and
个别
analysis
官
results
员
related to
和
them.
专家
Recently,
随意
certain
发表观点，
WHO
轻率
officials
否定
and
当时的
experts
结果，
made remarks denying
完
the
全
results of the
是
study.
违背
This
科
is
学精
against
神
the
的，
spirit of science.
是对世界各国参与前期溯源工作
It
的
is
科学家的粗鲁冒犯和
An
不
affront
公，
to the
是
scientists
将
who
新冠
participated in
溯
phase
源
1
政治
study
化的表现，
and an injustice
是
done
中
to
国科
them.
学界无法容忍的，
It is
也是
unacceptable
不能
and
被
in-
全球科学家
intolerable to the
所接受
Chinese community, science community, and
第二，
unacceptable to
在
the
第一
global
阶段
science
联合
community.
研究已投入
Second,
巨大的人力、物力、财力基础上，
we
我们
invested
并没有
enormous
移
amount
向
of
新冠
manpower,
病毒溯源的脚
assets,
步，
and funding
仍然
to the
投
phase
入
1
资源
study,
继
but we did
续
not
在
stop
流行
there,
病学、
and we
分子
continued
流行病学、
conducting
动物与
all
环境
round
乃至实验
science-based
室检查等方向
study in the fields
开展
of
全面的
epidemiology,
科学
molecular
调查研究工
epidemiology,
作。
animals and
相关
environment,
进展
and even
和
laboratory
结论
inspection.
也已经
The
有
relevant
中方科
progress
学家
and findings
通过
have been
与
shared
世卫
by
组织
Chinese
和
scientists
新冠病原体起源
through
国际科学咨询小
reports
组
to
SARS-CoV
and exchange with
报告交流
WHO
或通过
and the
发表
Scientific
文章
Advisory
等
Group
方
for
式
the origins of novel
与国
pathogens
际
or
科学
SAGO
界和同行进行了
that
分
made
析。
available to the
众
international
多研究发
science
现
community
也
and
进
our
一步证
colleagues.
实了第一阶段联合
The
研究
findings
的
of the
结果
many studies further
这些
supported
研究
the
成果和
results
相
from the
关
phase
数
1
据
joint
已
study.
在国际国内学术刊物上
The results and relevant data have
作为
been
负责
made
任的
available
国家
publicly
和有责任
on
感的
Chinese
科
and
学家
international academic
我
journals.
们始
As
终在积极
a
与
responsible
世界各
country
国科
and
学家
responsible
分享研
scientists,
究成果
we have been actively sharing
我们
our
希望
study results
秉承
with
科学的
scientists
态
across
度
the world. We
坚
hope
持科学家为主
that
体
In a science-based and scientist-driven manner, we will be able to strengthen exchange cooperation and information sharing, and advance origins tracing on the track of science. As for attempts to politicize the issue and smear China's efforts, the global science community will be watching, and they will not be manipulated or fooled. We urge certain personages of the WHO to return to a science-based and objective position. Do not be coerced to become a tool of politicizing COVID-19 origins tracing. With me today are Professor Tong Yigang and researcher Zhou Lei, both of whom participated in the joint study between WHO and China. They will also share information with us. Together, we will take your questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shen Hongbing. The floor is open for questions. Please identify your affiliation before raising your question.
谢谢主持人。环球时报记者提问。
Global Times.
世卫组织个别官员认为，我们中国政府
WHO
对新冠
officials
数据的发布工作没有做到
that
公开
China's
透明，
information
影
disclosure
响
is
了
not
全球新
transparent
冠溯
enough
源研
and
究工作。
affected the
请问
global
发言人
origins
对这
tracing.
个问题你们怎么看？
What is your
在新冠
take
溯源
on
工作中
this?
我们遇到了什么样的困难？
And what
谢谢
difficulties are we facing in origins tracing?
好，谢谢这位记者的提问。那么
Thank
这
you
个
for
问
your
题呢，
question.
我们有周磊研究员
And I
进
have
行回答。
Ms. Zhou Lei to take your question.
非常感谢这位记者朋友的提问。
Thank you for raising
您
this
提到的这
question.
个情况，其实我们也都有所
On
关
the
注
issue you
到。
mentioned, we're paying
这个
close
说实
attention
话，
to
作为
that.
一个亲身经历
To
了
be
第一阶
honest,
段联合溯源研究的
I have personally
东方的
took part
科
in
学
the
家
Phase 1 study,
我个人内心感觉还是挺惊讶的，
and
因为事实上
it caught me by
当时
surprise.
在武汉，我们联合研究
Back in Wuhan, when
科
we
学家
carried out
包
this
括国
joint
外和国内
mission,
的联合
the joint mission included
我们共同
experts from both
开展
China
这
and
个
other
联合溯源研
countries.
究的过程当中，
In our
我们
joint
中方的
research,
科学家是本着科学、
Chinese
公
scientists
开、客观、
all
透
along
明
acted
的
in
这
a
么一个工作
science-based,
原则，
objective,
把我们所有
and
掌握的数
transparent
据
manner.
和资料
We
都进
shared
行了
with
分享，
foreign experts
也包括
all the
比如
data
说
and
早期
information
的
we
病
had,
例的
including
信息，还有我们
information
当
on
时
early
对武
cases.
汉的这个早期的呼吸道的传染病可能的可疑的
As
新冠
well
病毒
as
感染的76000多人的这么一些病例的资料，我们都进行了分享
Information
和
on over
深入的联合分析研究。
76,000
当时的结
suspected
果
cases
得到
of
了专家们
pneumonia
的
in
集
Wuhan.
体的这个认可。
They
然后此外的话呢
approved and
我记得
acknowledged
当时我
the
们还把
information we
我们
shared.
中国境内
As I
18
recall,
2018
we
年
also
到
shared with them
2020年的
information
所有
from
当时采集了
2018 to
38000多份的
2020
家禽
in
家畜
China.
样本。
During that period of time, we collected over 38,000 samples of animal and poultry and over 41,000 species of wild animals. And in none of these samples tested positive for SARS-CoV-2. We also carried out research on the upstream and downstream supply chains of animal products sold within the market, and we found no evidence of transmission among animals. All that information was shared with the WHO group, and the results and findings were recognized by them. During the first phase, we acted in a science-based and transparent manner, and we also considered the hypothesis of a lab leak. In order to be thorough, during their stay in Wuhan, we invited the WHO group to visit in person several labs and institutes in Wuhan to have in-depth exchanges with relevant staff. Even students working in these labs, their physical status, relevant information were also provided to the foreign experts. So I think from whatever perspective you may look at it, Throughout the phase 1 study, we have shared everything we had with others. There were no holding back, no reservation from our side. As scientists and researchers, we all know that virus tracing can be complex and difficult. Throughout history, we've had quite a number of pandemics, such as HIV. It took decades of work for us to come to preliminary conclusions about the origin of HIV. And in the case of Ebola, Ebola was first discovered in the 1970s, but until today, its origin still remains unclear. And we are only 3 years into COVID, so there's a long journey ahead of us. In terms of origins tracing, the past experience shows us that the place where the virus spread is not necessarily the place of origin. And in terms of tracing the origins of COVID-19, what requires is the joint global efforts of all scientists around the world to work in a science-based and impartial manner and work together on origins tracing. And this is why the WHO plays a very important role in this. It is an authoritative international body. Thus, it must act in a science-based, impartial, and meticulous manner. So I think this claim from the WHO is somehow arbitrary and it seeks to deny the findings of the first one research. And I think doing so would only damage the WHO's own credibility. So this is what we've done on origins tracing and our point of view. Thank you. Next question, please.
Debbie Edward from ITV News. I want to just follow up on that question about the World Health Organization claim. You seem to suggest that you have been open and transparent throughout. So, as you mentioned, do you think that it's purely political, that there are these accusations? And finally, I'd like to ask you about the recent study that you have produced regarding raccoon dogs and the suggestion that they could have been an intermediate host potentially for the virus. Thank you.
请翻译一下。
我的问题也与世卫组织相关。您之前一直说，我的问题也与世卫组织相关。您之前一直说，在溯源的过程当中，中方一直是以开放透明的态度在进行相关的研究。那么，您是否认为世卫组织近期对中方的指责纯粹是一种政治操弄？另外，我们看到近期中方发表的研究也显示，这个新冠疫情可能有一个新的这个中间宿主。对此，您如何看待？谢谢。
好，谢谢这位记者的提问。我们请洪一刚教授来回答这个问题。
Professor Tong will take this question.
关于这个政治方面的事情哈，我觉得
As for the political nature of the accusations,
我不认为这个问题是
to me,
是一个政治
as far as I am concerned,
是一个科学的问题。我不认为这个现在提出这项
I
问题
think
是科学的。
origins tracing is a matter of science, so the accusations are not science-based.
第一阶段，这个世卫组织派出了专家组和我们中国
WHO sent international experts to work with Chinese experts for about a month, and we had in-depth exchanges that is science-based and reached joint findings and conclusions. These findings are made public on the internet and are recognized by all parties. As for recently released data,
发现了叫 raccoon dog 豪子这个动物是否是这个新的
they referred to new evidence regarding the raccoon
病
dogs,
毒的源头
which could be the source, a source of the virus, but so far the chain of evidence is far from being complete.
是在想希望
many people hope to find a chain of evidence leading to a certain answer, and we also want to find it, and we also want to find the source. We are working very hard on it. Chinese scientists and scientists across the world are working on this. But just with the data released in relation to the previous, in the recent paper, it is still far from our objective. We may have a hypothesis, and then we will work to prove it. In China, we have a story that a person is always doubting that the neighbor has stolen his eggs, and he observes his neighbor and see every step the neighbor moves. It is as if the neighbor is carrying the eggs with him. But the truth is, the neighbor has never done that. So in this case, in Origin's case, if we follow the lead of every possible clue and try to prove something that was imagined in the first place, it will be misleading. A previous paper released by the Chinese side showed that there were animal samples in environmental samples. Apart from human genomes, there are also genomes of pig, oxes, cats, and rats. And the abundance of such genomes is much bigger than that of raccoon dogs. In the Huanan market, we took several hundred animal samples, and there was no SARS-CoV-2 genomes in those samples. So it is far from having, we are far from having enough evidence to prove that raccoon dogs are the intermediate host. We have also found SARS-CoV-2 genomes in environmental samples, which were almost 100% in homology with human genomes. So it is much more likely that the virus was brought into the market by humans, not by animals. Many samples which tested negative were also from raccoon dogs, which far exceed the number of positive samples of raccoon dogs. So we cannot prove that the virus is from raccoon dogs. There were many who were indeed infected in the Huanan market, but it is also possible that the virus was brought in by humans, not by animals. So it could be transmitted from humans to animals. So we cannot say for sure that these facts show that raccoon dogs can be the intermediate host. Thank you.
谢谢主持人。中新社记者提问：目前有外媒报道，中国疾控中心作者团队在关于华南海鲜市场早期研究数据的文章论文投稿
The China CDC team used to upload data to the GSA platform, but was later deleted. Was that true? And what was the real scenario?
Thank you for your question. I will take it.
中国疾控中心
From what I know, our team at the CDC submitted the first draft of our paper to the journal Nature in February 2022. In the process of article submission and amendment, expert teams from the China CDC and other departments have acted in accordance with the international practice on paper publication, and that is, they uploaded the raw data related to the paper on the GISAID platform, and such data were only to be accessed by the journal's reviewers. They also reached an agreement with the database that relevant data will be released to the public after the official publication of the article. And relevant data remained there, they were not deleted. On March 11, 2023, we found that the data we uploaded had already been released by the platform without our team's knowledge. Our team then reached out to the GSAID platform by phone, and the platform staff replied that the data was released by mistake by their staff. The platform then stopped public access to the data, but the data still remained on the platform. Neither our team nor the platform deleted the data, and the data access link remains available for journal reviewers. There is nothing wrong with our process of uploading data, and it is in keeping with international practice. We hope that GSAID staff will clarify this matter to the press and to WHO and present the facts to the people. In addition, the latest version of our paper has already been officially published online in Nature on April the 5th, and all the raw data have already been released simultaneously on the 4 international and Chinese databases. Thank you.
那边吧，第3排那位女记者，这边这位，这边，对对对。
From CCTV. Indeed, this article has drawn a lot of attention, namely the article on early data concerning the Huanan seafood market. What are the findings of this article, and how would they help with origins tracing? Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Tong will take your question. Thank you for your question. The paper actually was about our samples collected from Huanan market from January to March of 2020. These are samples of the environment and frozen animals, and then they were subjected to PCR tests and metagenomic analysis. All the animal samples were tested negative. And there were also 923 environmental samples, among which 73 were tested positive. 3 virus strains were successfully isolated. After genomic analysis, the viral genomes were nearly 100% in homology with early cases of infected human patients, suggesting that the virus was brought to the market by humans. And then there were also information about the intermediate host, mostly pointing to a human source, but also including genomes of pigs, oxes, chickens, and ducks, and other cold chain products. These findings suggest that it is likely the virus was likely to be brought to the market by humans. This is also supportive of the findings of the joint study by WHO and China in phase 1.
谢谢，我是美国彭博社的记者。现在中方科学家、专家
Chinese scientists
认为新冠最有可能
and experts
的起源溯源是什么
view on the most probable source of the SARS-CoV-2. Could you share some information on that? Researcher Zhou Lei will take this
非常
question.
感谢您的这个提问。其实关于这个新冠病毒的起源，应该说我们在第一阶
As for
段
the
的研
origins
究过
of
程
the
当中，
virus, actually
其实就
in
已
phase 1
经得到了
study,
一个
we
结论。
had
这个结论也
a
充分地
conclusion
展示在我们当时和
which
世
was
卫组织联合发布的联合研究报告。
fully demonstrated in our joint
大
report
家
with
去仔细
WHO,
地读一
and
下我
you
们
are
那
most
份报告。
welcome to
应该说在报告里
read
面，我们
that
是
report
很明确地提
carefully.
出来了。
In that report, we stated clearly our assessment of several hypotheses regarding the origins of the virus. In terms of humans, animals, and interspecies transmission and lab leak theory, we all made assessments. We had an epidemiological group, molecular epidemiological group, environment and animals group, and lab group. So we conducted all-round study, which came up with a credible result. So I would like to reiterate here that the possibility of the direct spillover from both human and animal source is relatively likely, and an intermediate host is likely to highly likely, and introduction from cold chain is likely, and an introduction from lab leak is extremely unlikely. So after the phase 1 study, we did not stop where we were, and we continued to move forward and made a work plan right there in Wuhan and conducted a lot of further studies. And the follow-up research results were all supportive of our findings in the phase 1 joint study. And so far, we have not changed in our assessment of the origins of the virus, and I refer you to the WHO China joint report. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from CNA. Referring to a recent editorial by the WHO, it questioned why data on viral samples that were collected in Wuhan in January 2020 were not shared immediately, but waited until 3 years later, more than 3 years later now, to be made public. Also calling the lack of data disclosure, quote, simply inexcusable. So what's the reason for China not releasing this data earlier, and what's your response to this? Thank you.
请翻译一下。
最近的一篇社论当中，世卫组织质疑为什么2020年1月从武汉收集的病毒样本数据没有立即分享，而是在3年多后的今天才公开。此外呢，世卫组织还称缺乏数据披露简直不可原谅。那么为什么不早一点公布这些数据？您对这些评论有何回应？谢谢。
好，非常感谢你的提问。
Thank you for your question.
我来回答一下这个问题。
I will take your question.
世界卫生组织刚才这个周类研究员提到了，世界卫生组织和我们中方联合专家组在2020年7月至2021年1月，我们联合溯源
conducted joint origins tracing from July 2020 to January 2021. During the research, they visited the Huanan seafood market and other localities. The joint research also produced recommendations concerning the over 70 plus positive the 70 plus PCR positive cases. And thus recommendations were made on the following sequencing testing on these cases. And based on these recommendations, we've carried out follow-up studies. And follow-up studies concerned the DNA barcoding of the virus. We found that there were no follow-up evidence that can be provided to prove that. And with the findings of the DNA barcoding and relevant data on the seafood markets, we've released this article and published relevant data. And in accordance with international practice, we've uploaded the data onto the GSI AID platform. And relevant data have now been simultaneously published on the 4 platforms we've mentioned, and the article has been published on many relevant journals. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it takes time for us to conduct research. And according to recommendations of the WHO on follow-up studies, we've taken steps to analyze relevant data. And it takes time for us to come up with an article, and it takes time for us to submit and upload it. and relevant data, if we have any, will be released in a timely manner. So on our part, we did not hold back any data or delayed their release. After the release of the Phase 1 study, Chinese scientists carried out a large amount of work related to origins tracing, and the findings have also been made public. For instance, on the blood serum of blood donors in Wuhan in the later half of 2019, we found no positive results, and this data has also been shared on relevant platforms. We also conducted research on relevant bats and bat coronaviruses. No coronavirus-related sequencing were found in the over 70,000 bats, and relevant findings were published to the National Science Review. We've also shared relevant findings and data with our international counterparts. Thank you. Next question, please.
谢谢主持人。中国日报记者提问。
From China Daily.
最近媒体对中国疾控中心关于华南海鲜市
Now
场
we
研
are
究
seeing a
发表
lot
文
of
章，其中的
attention
相关测序
for the
的这些
article,
数据。
especially the sequence article related to the Huanan seafood market. So from a professional point of view, do you have something to share with us on that? Thank you for your question. I will have Mr. Tong Yigang to take your question.
还没有任何科学的根据能够明确新冠病毒的真正
There
的
is
起
still
源。
no scientific
那么
evidence
这
that can
篇
prove the true
文章
origins of
涉及的一
SARS-CoV-2.
些动物样品
The animal samples
其实
used in this
都
article
所有的动物样品经过检测全部都是阴性的。
tested
那么
all
这就
negative
提
for
示这
SARS-CoV-2,
个
and this suggests
华南海鲜市场的动物
that
并没有真正的感染。那么它
the
在华南海鲜
that
市场的环境中
animals
存在
in
的
the
这些
seafood market
阳
did
性的
not
标本，
contract
这些标本中所
SARS-CoV-2.
检测出的受
As
体的
of
信息，
the positive
绝大部分
samples
都是人
from the
的
market,
信息，
they are
也有
mainly
其他动物
from
的信息。
human
所以呢，这也
genomes.
提示呢，就华南海
And
鲜
this
市场
shows that
这些病例实际上很可能都是来源于人的，而不是
Most cases
来源于
related to the
海鲜市场的
seafood
动物的。
market are highly likely to
科
come
学家
from
们一直
human
就
instead of
新冠的起
animals.
源正在进行努力的开展研究。
Scientists
而
are
且也
working
在
hard
其他的一些国家也
on
发现了一
origins
些
tracing,
和
and
新
now
冠
in
病
other
毒更
countries
加接
we
近的蝙
have
蝠的冠状
seen
病毒。
some
但
bat
是新冠病毒
coronaviruses
究
that are
竟
more
是
similar
怎
to
么样，从什么地
SARS-CoV-2.
方、什么方式
As of
来感
where
染人的，
and
这个
how
确实还需要
exactly
进一步研究。
SARS-CoV-2 made
媒体对于这个
cross-species
事情关注
transmission
也
onto
反映
humans,
了
further
公共卫生
study
问
is
题，
required.
大家对于公共卫生问题的
There's
关
a lot
心，
of
这也
tension
敦促
on
我们
origins
科学工
tracing,
作者
and
要
this shows
从
to
科学
some
的
extent
层
that
面
people
对这些
care a
速度
lot about
给
public
出
health
一些科
issues.
学的
So
解
we
读
as researchers will
也
continue
让大家能够更好
to
地理解
adopt
这
a
些数据
science-based
寄出来
data
的。
on relevant science-based approach on relevant data and give proper explanation to help people better understand what they mean. Thank you. Next question, please. From Southern Metropolis Daily, you mentioned that there were some blood samples prior to the outbreak of COVID-19. Do you have more information on that?
检测情况。好，这个问题请周磊研究员回答。
I have Ms. Zhou to answer your question.
好，非常感谢这个您的提问。
Thank you for
事
your
实上呢
question.
我们当时在武汉第
In
一阶段的联合
Wuhan
溯源
during
研
the
究过程
Phase
当中，
1 joint
这一方面的
study,
工作建议就已经提出来了。
we have
那么
made
中方呢践行
recommendations
我
on
们当
this
时的承
work,
诺，
and China
在之后呢就非常快的
has
组织了
worked
大
on
量的
its
人力
commitments
物
and
力，包
organized
括
a
投
lot
入
of
了财力
manpower,
去开展这些
resources, and
储存
funding
的健康
to
献血者血
study
清的一个检测工作。
the
这个工作量
serums
非常大，我可以给
from
大家介绍一下。当
humans.
时涉及
And
3
this is a
万，
lot of
然后有
work.
4万
It covers more than
3850份
30,000
血液样本，
donors
我们要把它们
in
全部
Wuhan,
完
and
成
we
检测。
need to
那
test
么这
all
个
of the
检测结
samples.
果呢显示
The
我
results
们没有
show
检测到新冠病毒的抗体。
The
那么
results
这
showed
些
no
献血者呢
positive
都是在2019年
PCR
12月
results.
之前的武汉当地的献血者。
So
所以这个
the
研究
samples
结果也是
were
很
from
好的回应了
people
我
who
们当时第
donated
一
blood
阶段
before
联合
from
溯源研
September
究
to
当中的
December
一
of
个共同的
2019.
发现，就是
And the
在
findings
那个
support our
2019
previous
年
finding
12
in
月
the
之
first
前，在武汉当地并没有
Phase
更
1
早发现更
joint
早的
study,
病例。
which
所以
is
这
we
一
did
些
not
结果
find
就
any
像刚才
cases
我们
earlier than December 2019. And as my colleague just said, we also shared information and data related to this with our colleagues in a timely manner. Thank you.
就那边吧，第3排。
谢谢主持人。新京报记者提问。那我们注意到，根据中国疾控中心上传至 GSAT 平台上，
Based on the data regarding Hainan market uploaded by China CDC to GSAT, international experts had different study results. What do you think is the reason behind the difference, and do you think there are other reasons? Is it a problem of methodology or what?
Mr. Tong Yigang will take your question.
针对这些上传的一些数据。 采用不同的方法、软件以及采用不同的一些参数分析，都有可能会得到不同的结果。当然呢，对数据中的 DNA 条码的分析的结果发现，环境中的这些样品，它的宿主信息中最多的还是人的这个信息，就是人的基因的丰度是最高的。那么这就提示这些华南海鲜市场这种环境中的这些病毒。
COVID contamination in the seafood market most likely came from the early human cases. In addition, DNA barcoding results also indicate that before the market's closure, there already were various species of pigs, cattle, chicken, and duck in the seafood market. Some experts are concerned about the presence of a few animal genomes discovered in the sample and suspects that related animals may have passed the virus on to humans. However, none of the research data available indicate that animals had been affected with SARS-CoV-2 in the seafood market. So there is no scientific basis that supports animals as the source of the virus in the seafood market. In addition, the environmental samples were collected in January, later than when the early cases were reported. So even if there were cases of animal infection in the market, it is likely that the virus was passed on to animals from humans. Therefore, the claim of human transmission from animals in the seafood market clearly lacks scientific basis. Thank you. Next question, please.
这边第2排。
谢谢主持人。中国国际电视台 CGTN 记者提问。
From CGTN,
世卫组织的专家认为，由于缺
some
乏中
WPO
国
experts
早期病例的原始数据，第一
that
阶
due
段
to
的
a lack
联
of
合研究报告
raw
受到了
data,
严重的批评。
the Phase 1 study report
好，谢谢您的
was
问
seriously
题。
jeopardized.
我想
What's
这个
your
问题请
response?
周磊研究员来回答。
Ms. Zhou will take this question. Thank you for your
这个情
question.
况我也关注到了。
I have
当
noticed
时
such
我
claims.
们在开展第一阶
Let
段
me
的
say
联合溯
that
源研究的
during
时
the
候，
Phase 1 joint
无论是
study,
我们中方科学家，
both
还
the
是世卫
Chinese
组织
scientists
邀请的、遴选
and
的国际的这些顶级的
WHO
科学家，我们这些
experts,
联合
which were
专家组的
prestigious
团队的成员们，
scientists,
都是始终本着这个科
all
学的态度
acted
去开展溯
with
源
a
研究的。
science-based approach.
而且当时我们也是制定了一个4个共同的原则。
And we
所以
formulated
在
a
这个原则
principle
下呢，
which
应
is
该
called
说
four
在武
jointly,
汉工作
as
的这
briefed
个
in the
28天
opening
的联
remarks.
合溯源研究的这
So
个
the
过程，
28-day
虽然很
joint
辛苦，
study
但是成果也
was
是很
quite
显著的。
hard
我
work,
们
but
发
we
现了
had
这
some
个
very significant
得到了
results.
刚才说了这些结论。
As we briefed
您
you
提到这个
about,
早期病例，
we have
我也
found
回应一下。
some
事实
results,
上呢，
and
这个
regarding
当
the
时
early
我
cases, let
们
me
把所有
respond to
的
you
在武
on
汉
that.
我们能收集到的早期病例的，包
All
括
the
这
early
些
cases
可能
found
感染、
in Wuhan
可
that
疑
were
的感
available
染
to
者的资
us,
料，我们
including
都进行了
suspected
分享。
cases,
我们
were
中
shared
方的团队和
with
国际的专
international
家的团
experts.
队，应该说是每天共同工
The
作。
Chinese
我
team
们展
and
示
the
我们所
WHO
有
team
收集到
worked
的资料，
day in, day
病
out.
例的表格，
We shared
包括
all the
调查问卷，
information, the
所有的信息。
health
当然，在这个过程当
records,
中呢，
the
也是本着
data.
这个科学的
with each other, and we have worked with each other with respect to science. We followed international customary practice, including protecting the privacy of the investigated subjects. So we did not use camera to record video, but the teams shared data among themselves, and we worked together to analyze the data. So there's no case of hiding any information from each other, or hiding earlier case data from WHO experts. That's not the fact. After the release of the joint report, we have won the recognition by a wide range of parties, including WHO, including our international colleagues. I'm wondering why these remarks are coming up at this time, and I'm saddened by this. I must say that the Chinese side have invested enormous manpower, resources, and funding to this work, and the top-notch international experts also worked day and night to get this very authoritative joint report, which should be respected and not be willfully denied or criticized. I think we need to follow a science-based approach and ensure that origins tracing is scientific. And I call on the international community to advance this work instead of doubting about each other's intentions. This is not helpful for the global origins tracing. This is our view on this matter. Thank you.
第一排。
谢谢。新华社记者提问，刚才专家提到啊。
You just said that the findings of the Phase 1 joint study suggest that the lab leak theory is extremely unlikely, but now WHO is saying that all hypotheses are open and we need further study on all of them. What is your view on this? And as for the COVID-19 Origins Act passed by the United States, what is your response? Thank you.
Mr. Tong Yigang will take your question. Thank you. During the Phase 1 study, the WHO picked over 10 experts. Together with China's 10+ experts, they conducted joint study in Wuhan for over 1 month. The conclusion of a lab leak being extremely unlikely was reached by the joint team after they conducted in-depth studies, including their visit to virus labs in Wuhan and in-depth exchanges with relevant staff in these labs. Regarding the various hypotheses on COVID-19's origins, the joint team also ranked each and every one of them from extremely unlikely to very likely, and all these are fact-based, science-based conclusions. Follow-up studies should be carried out on the basis of respecting the results of the first phase research. If we refuse to accept or acknowledge the results already made in the first phase, then it will be a huge waste of resources and may even mislead follow-up studies. Refusing to accept or acknowledge existing findings may also put the value of our follow-up work under question. As of the U.S. Act, I have to highlight that origins tracing is a matter of science. We need to look for answers in science and in facts. We should not politicize these issues, and we stand firm against acts of denigration against science and sensibility. Thank you. Next question, please.
后面吧，那个后面这位第5排这位男记者，对。
你好，日本共同社提问。关于那个溯源的调查和研究方面呢，今后中国要和国际社会
What steps will China take to work with the international community on origins tracing? Are there any specific plans for cooperation with other countries? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Ms. Zhou will take this question. Thank you for your question. This is also what we want, international cooperation. As I said repeatedly, origins tracing is not the issue of one single country and cannot be completed by one single country. It requires international collective efforts. The world, especially the world scientists, need to work together to trace the origins of the virus. This is what we've been doing and what we've been advocating. China has been working on the basis of openness, transparency, science, and cooperation. We've been working with WHO and invited international experts. Since 2020, we invited at least twice international experts to China for origins tracing studies, and this will not change in the future. And as a matter of fact, my colleagues and I have said this several times, that the Chinese scientists have worked closely with more than a dozen international experts sent by WHO, and produced a very detailed joint report on origins tracing. This is a demonstration of our attitude, and it is the crystallization of our hard work. And we did not stop there. Our hope and our efforts have never stopped. And our many research and studies have been shared without reservation with our international colleagues. We published several papers. We shared our sequence on several databases. In future, on origins tracing, we support we support the decision by WHO. We have been sending experts to follow up on the recommendations from the WHO. We have taken concrete efforts to advance this work, and we hope that origins tracing can truly be a global work. We hope that the places, the perspectives can be expanded to all possible countries or regions, instead of focusing merely on Wuhan. In Wuhan, we've done enormous amount of work already. I have repeated this position many times, and our position has not changed. Origins tracing should be a global effort. WHO is an authoritative international organization in this field. We hope that it can really, truly organize and mobilize a global effort and work in a prudent and science-based approach. Gather together the elite scientists around the world and find a credible answer that the people of the world deserve. The WHO released an article expressing the hope that China could immediately share all data related to origins tracing. What is China's plan to cooperate with WHO on sharing the data, and do you have a specific plan on sharing? Thank you. Ms. Zhou will take this question. Thank you. Regarding the article you mentioned, I have read it as well, and I'm aware of its arguments. Actually, we have been in close communication and cooperation with WHO. The Phase 1 joint study was a case in point. We responded to the call of the resolution from the 73rd WHA. We immediately invited the international experts to China. That was a big step taken by China. In addition, after the conclusion of Phase 1, joint study, as mentioned by my colleagues just now, we shared all the results of our further studies with SCIO, the team of experts under WHO. We have had in-depth exchanges and timely cooperation with SCIO and incorporated the scientific findings on several international academic journals to share with our international colleagues. We will continue with our work in this regard. Since 2020, we have worked with WHO experts and our colleagues in the joint mission, not only in Wuhan, but also through video conferences. During the pandemic, we couldn't meet face-to-face. We sent emails to each other and held video conferences. And researcher Yang Yugui has also taken part in the SCIO's work. So, from the perspective of Chinese scientists and from the bottom of our hearts, we have been open, transparent, and followed a science-based approach. The government is also very supportive of us. It's provided a lot of manpower and resources and funding for us. Otherwise, we couldn't get to such good findings to share with our international colleagues. The papers we have written are all published on very influential academic journals. And in the future, we will continue to work our international colleagues to work on origins tracing of SARS-CoV-2 in a science-based approach and work very closely with international colleagues to share all the latest the data and results with our colleagues. Thank you. That is the end of this press conference. Thank you for coming.
That was the press conference held by National Administration of Disease Control and Prevention. Well, during the press conference, experts as well as officials have briefed the media about some of the most concerning issues about the origin tracing of COVID-19. During the press conference, they said that China has been open as well as transparent throughout the entire process. The country has been sharing vital examples and also data with international experts. They also say that the entire process is science-based research and study. And throughout the process, China has also made extraordinary efforts and investment in manpower, resources, and funding about the study. And they also emphasize that the process of origin tracing is going to take time, and also this process should not be either politicized or manipulated. This needs to be done with a joint efforts with the international community, and it also needs to be conducted in an impartial manner. And throughout the press conference, they also take questions from media to address some of the most concerning issues about the origin tracing of COVID-19. Well, you're watching The World Today here on CGTN with more to come.